Hi, my name is Luis Nascimento and I'm presenting the paper Fast and Safe Path Planning Method for an Autonomous Smart Walker. A walker is an essential tool for mobility assistance of disabled people with reduced lower motor function. Smart walkers are more complete devices that include motion planning techniques to perform autonomous movement. As can be seen on this figure, we have the Youth's Cloud Walker. It is an autonomous smart walker capable of sensing and interacting with the environment, promoting assisted mobility and rehabilitation to impaired individuals. Assistive robots such as Youth's Cloud Walker have real safety requirements since they interact directly with the human body. So, for this reason, it's important the planning of path sufficiently far from the obstacles. And that's the why we are working with the probabilistic phone method. The probabilistic phone method, or PFM, is a sampling-based path planning algorithm with the main advantage of obtaining a path bounded by a sequence of bubbles, which guarantees a free obstacle region for safe maneuvers. This method has only two parameters. And first one is the R-min, that denotes the minimum radius allowed for a bubble, and the K is the maximum number of children bubbles that a bubble with a radius mean can have. The probabilistic phone propagates through the free space by expanding new bubbles on the surface of the parent bubbles. For each generation, new bubbles can be expanded on the surface of other bubbles as a BFS algorithm. Thus, the phone propagates until some bubble encircles the goal configuration. A free obstacle path can be extracted from the phone by finding a sequence of overlapped bubbles from goal configuration to the initial configuration. And this structure is called rosary. The rosary is an important structure since it maintains the path with high clearance from the obstacles. Besides, it's possible to apply some path smoothing techniques, maintaining the path in the length of the bubbles, which guarantee the path safety. The goals-based probabilistic phone is an algorithm based on PFM, which improves the searching time by computing less bubbles. It is inspired by the RT goal-based algorithm and also has two parameters, the R-min and the value of the bias. For each iteration, a random auxiliary configuration QAUX is sampled to find the new parent bubble. The method GBTF performs an exhaustive searching looking for the nearest bubble from auxiliary configuration. On the surface of this bubble, a new child bubble can be expanded, and the center of this bubble will be the nearest configuration between the auxiliary configuration and the surface of the parent bubble. Finally, the configuration QAUX has a chance to be sampled on the goal configuration, and all steps are repeated normally. In this paper, we proposed a variant of the GBPF, the improved goal-based probabilistic form, the IGBTF. This method presents another way to choose the parent bubble, and it has the same two parameters. As well as GBPF, for each iteration, a random configuration QAUX is sampled on the free space. But instead of finding the closest bubble among all bubbles in the phone, the new variation IGBTF makes a search only for the bubbles which has at least one child bubble on their surface. So this is the nearest bubble. Now the method will find which one of these children bubbles is the closest to QAUX. Finally, on the surface of this bubble here, a new bubble will be expanded. Here, we also have the case when the configuration QAuth is sampled on the Go configuration in order to bias the search. And for the last case, the configuration QAuth was sampled here inside this bubble. And obviously, it is the closest parent bubble from QAuth. But now, if the distance between the auxiliary configuration and the center of this bubble was shorter than the distance between all their children bubbles, the new bubble will be expanded on your own surface. Well, this whole process described in this method avoids analyzing and computing distance for all bubbles in the phone for all iterations, which decreases the searching time. Now, in order to compute the bubbles, we are using the concept of bubbles of free space, which make it possible to compute a volumetric region in the configuration space, but only using information from the distance from the workspace. For the computing of this region, we need to determine the minimum distance between the robot and the obstacle. In this case here, we denote this distance by dW. The smart walker is a robot with rotation. So if the walker moves from the origin point QC and travels to an arbitrary point Q, and if the translational distance or the rotational distance traveled by the robot was less or equal to dW, the robot will not collide with the obstacle. Finally, this region with a conic shape is defined as every configuration Q such that the sum of the translational and rotational distance from QC to Q is less than or equal to dW. To make possible the use of this conic region for those methods based on probabilistic form, first, we need to calculate the distance between the center of this region and its bounds. This distance, denoted by RB, will be the radius of a new spherical bubble inscribed in this region. Now, in order to simulate the path planning for the Cloud Walker, we defined two maps. The first map it presents only one possible route from initial to goal configuration, and it has a narrow passage. And for the second map, we have two possible passages. This first one is a narrow, which has a short length, and the second one is larger and longer. And in this table, we have here the parameters value for the algorithm. This figure shows the results for one simulation. We have the rosary found for each method in each map, and inside the rosary we can extract the path. For the first map, the rosaries look similar for all methods because there is only one narrow passage. So let's look at the second map. It is possible to observe that the methods present different rosaries in different directions. For PFM in figure D, the phone propagated through the larger space, which is safer. However, the path is longer. On the other hand, GBPF and IGBTF, they converged for the short passage, obtaining short paths. Here we have this illustration with the motion being performed by the robot with the path obtained by the method IGBTF. It's possible to see that the robot is maintaining the clearance from the obstacles. These tables present the results for 100 simulations to analyze path length, number of computed bubbles, and the searching time. As can be seen, PFM presented the worst results for all these cases, but this behavior was expected because PFM performs an approximated coverage of the free space, so a high number of bubbles are computed, and consequently the time is higher. Another feature is that these bubbles can be expanded for all possible passages, and large passages generate larger bubbles. So this increases the probability for the foam to converge faster by this space, and for this case, it will generate longer paths. In the process for the IGBTF and GBPF, the bubbles are guided by random configurations, but the goal makes the probabilistic foam converge faster to the goal configuration. Returning to these tables, IGBPF and GBPF presented very similar results, mainly for the first map. On the second map, it's quite similar, but it's more clear to observe that IGBPF presented better results than GBPF. So, the computation of the new bubble with information from the workspace was important because now the methods based on probabilistic form do not require the explicit representation of the obstacle in C space anymore. And this makes the whole path planning process computationally possible. The three methods, PFM, GBPF, and IGBPF, they all were capable of computing safe paths, but the method IGBPF proposed in this paper was the one who obtained the best results. Finally, future works involve research to find algorithms to improve the search of nearest bubbles, always trying to increase the performance of the method probabilistic form. So, thank you very much for your attention.